And just told me this meeting's being recorded. So welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Stacy Nakata, if you hadn't already heard that with our background chatter, co-president of PTSA this year, along with Debbie Burke. And so this evening, we have a presentation that will be presented by Jackie Brown. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this for us. After the presentation, we'll have our panel of expert parents available to answer your questions. So please make sure if you have questions to post them in the Q&A section and not the chat section on this Zoom meeting. And then we'll try to get everything answered as best as we all can. So Jackie, if you'd like to get us started, that would be awesome.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming, and I will try to keep this slideshow as brief as possible so that we can get to the Q&A, which I think we found over the years that's really where the best value comes from this event. So see if I can get this started. Okay. So hopefully Debbie, Stacy, stop me if you're not seeing this, but I think we're good to go. Survival guide for senior year. This assumes that a lot of you are about to embark upon senior year for the very first time. So there may be a lot of basic stuff in here, and apologize to those who are more familiar. But let's see. Okay, there we go. First, I wanted to just highlight some of the key resources for information that you'll have over the course of senior year. And these are going to be things that are already familiar to you if you're at MIHS for your undergrad years. The two key websites are obviously the high school website and the PTSA website, two distinct web pages. Both have useful information. There's a lot of overlap, but sometimes you can find information on one that you can't find on the other. Now, as far as some of the key parts of the high school website that have always been helpful for me were the daily bulletin for one, which unfortunately we haven't had for the past year because of COVID, but fingers crossed that will be coming back in the fall. And that's basically a daily report based upon the announcements of the students here in the building every day. And so it's a great way to keep up with what is happening right now in the building. Another great resource through the high school is the counseling department. The counseling department in general is awesome, but their webpage is also a good resource. There's a lot of information on there about testing, about college applications, a lot of other areas. They have a monthly newsletter, which hopefully folks who were at MIHS in the past have been receiving. You'll continue to receive those, as well as some direct communications that are relevant to your students. On the PTSA website, I would just like to make sure would like to call attention to the senior tab. So if you pull up our website on the home page, you'll see a senior tab, and you can click on that and you'll see a lot of great information for seniors about what's going to happen senior year. Now you can even do that now, but the information is probably for the current school year, not for next year, but it may give you a general sense for the timing of some of these events that are going to be happening. You'll be receiving tons of emails from the PTSA as well as the school as the year goes on. We send a lot of email blasts out to senior families only when there are action items or when there are events coming up that are relevant for our seniors. So keep an eye out for that. Social media has become more prevalent in the last few years. We don't have an official PTSA Facebook page, but there have been for the last couple of years, senior parents have formed private groups on Facebook, and that's a great way for parents to communicate with each other and just to share information, advise each other, and just to stay connected. And even post-COVID, I suspect that that will be a useful tool going forward. Your students will probably have some social media groups as well, and I think you should just expect that you will not be invited to that, and that's okay. Senior class meetings happen throughout the year, pretty much starting from the beginning of the school year. That's for the students, but it's good for you to be aware of when they're happening, because then it gives you the opportunity to have the conversation with your student about what was discussed, what they need to be focused on at that time, and it's just a good way to stay up to date. I've got Naviance on this list because it becomes it's going to be a pretty important tool for your student this year. Naviance is the platform that a lot of the college applications are going to be submitted through. So it's really, I suspect a lot of you are already familiar with it since the students have been using it from freshman year. But if not, I would encourage you all to get connected to your student's Naviance account, browse through it and see what it looks like. It's a great resource for researching colleges and for finding colleges that are a good fit for your student and for the things your student is looking to study, or just the type of environment that they'll be most comfortable in. Again, I mentioned that it facilitates the college application process. The counselors will also be using Naviance to upload a lot of the documents that are required in connection with your student's application, like transcripts. This is just a quick snapshot. I'm not going to stay here long. These are just some of the issues and events to think about over the course of the year. Later in the slideshow, I'll talk through all of these again. Okay, just the counselors, shout out to our counselors who are very valuable, particularly for the seniors. They're going to be ensuring that every senior is going to be able to graduate on time and meet all their requirements. And so they're going to be working with them on this high school and beyond plan, which is also done through Naviance. They're a great resource for information about colleges, but also about a lot of other potential post-secondary opportunities that might be better suited for certain students. So there's a lot of different things that they can do, and the counselors are a great resource for information in that regard. So Counselor of the Day, that was, hopefully that will come back next year once everybody's in the building. I think that was pretty well received and pretty successful, having a counselor at a table during the lunch periods every single day. So a student can walk up, even if it's not their official academic counselor, they can walk up and ask a question and get help. Okay, so now we'll just go through a few timelines over the course of the year. Real quickly, the main thing to keep in mind is these are just general, guesses for the most part, but there's a lot of flexibility. So don't get too worried. And there's also variability with some of these because a lot depends on the particular schools. If your student's applying to college, each school has its own deadlines that you'll have to be aware of. Okay, spring of junior year. So now, confession is this event we're doing tonight usually happens a little earlier in the year. So apologies for that. But I suspect that a lot of this are things that your juniors, for those who have juniors, that they're already working on. If they took AP classes, then they've probably taken their AP exams. I know there's only a few makeup exams left this week, so they're probably done with that one. But they can start thinking about what they want to do for the summer. Obviously, summer campus visits are one thing that your family could try to plan if campuses are open, and fingers crossed that's going to happen. I know the UW has just announced that they're opening up for campus visits starting June 21st. So hopefully a lot of other schools will be as well. In addition, it's time for your student to think about jobs, volunteering, camps, whatever for the summer, partly because it looks good on the resume, but also, and probably more importantly, they are going to be seniors. They are on the edge of moving out and becoming independent adults. So these types of experience are going to be really good for them as they make that transition. If they want to get a head start on college applications, they can start writing resumes and essays now. That can take some pressure off come fall when there's a lot of stuff happening at the same time. So this last bullet is something that's pretty important to do now, and I suspect that juniors are already on top of this, a lot of them, but reaching out to teachers if they will write a recommendation letter for their colleges. They usually need at least 2, maybe more. And it's important to do that pretty soon, because some teachers get inundated with requests, and at some point it becomes difficult for them to take on new requests. So the sooner, the better. Okay, during the summer, just continuing the first 3 bullet points we already covered. One thing that you might want to consider as a parent is, if you're going to get your own senior portraits, instead of relying on the photos that are taken at the school with Dorian during Fee and Photo Day, if you're going to get your own portraits, then find your photographer soon and get them booked up for the fall, because come fall, those folks they're pretty booked up because they've got a lot of work with senior families all around the region. Senior parking pass is that may be one of the first communications you get come August. So just keep an eye out for that email. If your senior qualifies for parking, and you want to get parking, then you're pretty much guaranteed it. You just have to make sure you put in for it when it's time to do so. Okay. We've got ASB photo on here, and that's relating to the what has traditionally been Fee and Photo Day, which we're assuming and hoping will be back again next year. The only thing to keep in mind for seniors that's different is that there's this tradition, this semi-tradition for some senior students to dress up all crazy like for their photo because it's fun. The problem is that the ASB photo is something that has to legally be a good identification of that student. And so if you see your kid going out to Fee and Photo with a bunch of crazy face on, you might want to tell them, you may have to remove that, and they will tell them to remove it if it's a problem. Okay, summer, if you're intending to apply for financial aid, summer is a good time to get started pulling together the documents you'll need. Okay, come fall with start of school, there'll be a senior meeting pretty early on for cap and gown orders and graduation announcements. This will also be the time for you to take care of those senior portraits if you're doing them, and figure out what you want to submit for the yearbook. That's going to be the deadline for that, is usually around November. If you choose to purchase a senior ad, which is completely optional, and I think a lot of seniors advocate for their parents not to ever do that, but parents often want to do that. But if you're going to do that, that's usually due around November. And there's going to be a lot of information about that. You can probably find some of it now on our website, and it'll be coming out as as the fall goes on. Hopefully in the fall, there will be a return to some of these information sessions that we've had in the past, presented by the counseling department. There's in the previous years, there's usually been a night for discussion of the whole college application process. And then there's also been separate nights called Beyond High School, which provides an opportunity for students to learn about all of the different options that they have after graduation, all of the different alternate pathways. It could be four-year college, but it might be community college. It could be a trade school. It could be a gap year. My daughter did a gap year in Balsam. So that will be a great, hopefully that'll be back, and that'll be a great opportunity for you and your student to go and check out all the options that they have. Okay, if your student's applying early admission or early decision to a college, all I want to say here is that the deadlines are almost certainly going to be really early. So you just got to be on top of that. Now, as far as what early admission, early decision, and then regular admission are, we can talk about that in the Q&A if you want, if you're not already familiar. Or you can always reach out to your counselor for an even, for more expert information. But I think a lot of us have a handle on what those different application tracks actually are. And then the FAFSA is the form that you file for you filing that around October. But to do that, you probably want to be prepped ahead of time. So, okay, moving into the winter, then you still have admission. You still have application deadlines at a lot of schools. They tend to be they might be a little bit later in the year than the early admission, but some schools still have them pretty early. And the UW is a good example. Their regular admission is November 15th, so that's going to come up on you pretty soon. So the kids want to be on top of those early applications. Some of the application deadlines run into the new year and even up to close to March. So it really depends on the school. Now, one thing, so when you apply to a college, a lot of colleges will automatically consider all applicants for certain merit awards. So what'll happen when your student gets accepted to a school, they very well could also receive at the exact same time in their admission letter a merit award saying we're also offering you this much per year, and it's often based on their their record, and it's essentially the colleges are recruiting these students. So there's that category of merit awards, but there's also scholarships available to a lot of schools that are separate and that have to be applied for. So if your student is interested in one of those, first of all, if it's worth researching what's available at every school that your students applied for, and then if there is merit scholarship that needs a separate application, just be on top of those dates because they can come early as well, sometimes in the November, December timeframe. Okay, financial aid similarly can vary from school to school. So we talked about the FAFSA, which is for federal aid. The CSS profile is another worksheet that you fill out and submit for financial aid that comes from non-federal government sources. Okay, come spring, schools will be making their decision usually by the end of March. Hopefully there'll be a lot of happy news for kids. They will generally have the month of April to make their decision about where they want to go. And with May 1 being the traditional final drop dead commitment date. So that will be, for my daughter, it was like on, 11:59 on April 30th, she was like going back and forth, and it was honestly the last minute deal for her to make her decision. That happens, but that's the rules. They'll have AP tests next year, and then senior meetings there'll be several senior meetings probably during the April to May hour, and that's going to deal with a lot of stuff relating to the end of the year and graduation. End of year awards like galore with all of the different organizations in the school. That'll all be happening. Prom is going to hit around mid-May. Hopefully it will be back to normal. And then there's the a senior skip day, which we note. That is generally the Monday after prom. And just to give you a sense for how popular that is, this picture was taken on the Monday after prom during the school day. And that, as you can see, is the main senior parking lot right there. So an event not endorsed by the high school or the PTSA, but it sometimes, sometimes events are greater than us to do anything about it. Okay, continuing, senior awards night. This is, I think, probably referencing more the PTA Council Scholarships Awards. The high school also has an awards night that's related to community awards, military awards, athletics. So there'll be those events to look forward to. Senior finals have been a little wonky the last couple of years, but they have traditionally been the 3 days leading up to graduation. So that's kind of the last, that's when your students bearing down to kind of cross the finish line during those final 3 days. Baccalaureate is an event that is not a high school event, but it's sponsored by the MI Clergy Association, and it's the PTSA assists with the putting on of this event. It has you know, kind of, it maybe has some spiritual undertones to it, but it's not really a strictly religious event. There are speakers often representing different religions within the community, and these are students in the senior class, and it's more of a, they speak about more of kind of a personal reflection and their growth as they've gone through the schools. I think this year the theme was the hill we climb. Okay, graduation date. This is breaking news because I had this TBD like 30 minutes ago, but Debbie Burke just told me that it looks like the date is June 9th for next year. So you can mark your calendars, and that's a Thursday. I believe that'll be probably the second Thursday in June. Okay, graduation day. Now this is still a little bit up in, this could be up in the air because it's not entirely clear what graduation, the ceremony will look like next year. But 2 years ago, before COVID, the school had settled into reserving the Showware Center in Kent. So what I'm presenting here is if they go back to Showware next year, you can expect that your students are going to leave the high school on buses at about noon, and they're not coming back. They're going to go down, have rehearsal, and they're going to stay down there, have dinner, change into their clothes for the ceremony. And that's because of the, you know, they can't count on being able to bus them back and then get back in time with all of the traffic issues. So they'll be down there all day, and the graduation would happen in the 6:30 time frame for about 2 hours. If everything was back to normal, you'd have a really quick turnaround. So that after the ceremony, you got to get with your kids, you give them hugs, take some pictures, and then they've got to go change, and they're going to load buses again, assuming they're going to the party. And the senior party, they're going to be whisked away for an all-night party with all of their classmates for one last time together. That is the tradition that's been sponsored by the PTSA, the senior party, and hopefully that can return next year. And but in order for that to happen, it requires a ton of help, a lot of parents pitching in to plan it, to organize it, and to pull it off. And lots of chaperones needed who get to stay up all night with the seniors. So that's a blast. But if you are interested in helping out, please, you want to get involved with the Senior Activities Committee, which is a PTSA committee. And if you're interested, please contact the chair for next year, who is Jody Chris, and her email is right there. You can also find her in the directory. And I'm sure she would be happy to have as many people join the committee as are willing. Okay. I just wanted to put up here, I would guess you're all familiar with your counselors. This is the current assignments for counselors by last name of the student. And that's pretty much it for the initial part. And so I will, these are the panelists for tonight. I will turn it over now to Debbie and Stacy.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you for walking us through those super helpful pieces for this coming year. So as Jackie mentioned, we do have a panel here tonight. And while we're introducing ourselves, Stacy mentioned at the very beginning questions. If you could just use that Q&A You may have had questions come up as Jackie was reading, or as Jackie was going through the presentation, or any other things that you have questions about. We would love to know what those are so that we can answer them. So if you type them in the Q&A, we will make sure to pick those up, and we will do everything we can to help get answers to those. To start off with, why don't we introduce ourselves? Jackie, do you want to start and share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So Jackie is my name, and my son just graduated this year, and he's my younger of two. So now, you know, I'm graduated too, I guess. My daughter is graduated in 2019. So she was the last year that kind of had a normal year. And yeah, I've been involved with the PTSA for several years, and it's just, you know, it's a special group. So I'm really happy to be involved, and happy for one last hurrah here tonight.
Yes, thank you, Jackie, for agreeing to do this. He's post-graduation, so we appreciate him being here tonight. But it was a little understatement when he said the past few years, many years, probably like 15, 20, like over 15 years total.
Time flies.
Okay, I'll just choose. Margie, how about let's have you next? I'm going according to what I'm looking at on my screen, so.
Okay, yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Margie Starnes. I have two daughters. Both have graduated now. So my older daughter graduated also in 2019, like Jackie's. She is a rising junior at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I have a newly graduated daughter as of last week, who will be headed to Boston to the Berklee College of Music next year. So I also I'm post-graduation with no more kids going to the high school. So the last hurrah for me as well on this Zoom. So yeah, happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Margie. Emily.
Well, I think I'm the third one that has a 2019 and a 2021. And this is my last hurrah too. I have a 2019 son that was part of the last kind of standard schedule group of kiddos, and he's at University of Arizona in Tucson. And then my graduating senior, my daughter, is going to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo.
Thank you. Yeah, we have lots of experience on this panel, so we appreciate that. Julie, let's have you go.
Hi, I'm Julie Ogata-Chobanu, and I have two daughters. My oldest graduated in 2020, so she was part of the year that didn't have a graduation, but I felt like we got that whole senior year in, except for the very end part. I've been a part of that senior activities committee for 2 years, and next year will be my third. And I just want to say, please get involved and give Jody Chris an email. I think you guys would really enjoy being part of that. And like Debbie said, it takes a lot of volunteers to get that senior party and the end of the year stuff going. So the baccalaureate comes under that. And then I have a 2022 daughter who a lot of you have as well. And it's going to be interesting to go through it a second time, but the slideshow was great, such good information, and it brings back a lot of the memories and all those steps we went through for me just a little over a year ago.
Thanks, Julie. Stacy.
So hi, Stacy Nakata. So I have a college freshman who was also class of 2020 and went through a lot of those same things. They got their, you know, the first half of their year, but then they didn't get anything at the end of the year. And then I have a senior this year who is graduating out as well. Both are going to be at the UW. And so it was nice to have something for this end of year. And then I have a rising 8th grader along with Debbie. So if you'd like to introduce yourself too.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Debbie Burke, and I've been co-president with Stacy this year for the high school PTA, and I actually will be continuing this coming year because I do. So I have a a daughter who was class of 2020, also with Julie and Stacy, that went through that. And she is finishing up her freshman, well, she finished up, she's still not quite home yet. We let her stay down in Los Angeles a little longer, but she's been at Loyola Marymount this past year, or near Loyola Marymount. She's actually going to the college this fall. And then I have a rising senior as well. So I have a class of 2022 coming up this next year. And then I have a rising 8th grader at the middle school, also with Stacy's daughter, and actually they're pretty inseparable. So yeah, that's me. Okay, well, we do have a few questions that have come in. So maybe what I'll do is I'll go ahead and read a question off, and then as you, as panel members, feel free to chime in and give your insights to those. Okay, so first question. I know transcripts need to be ordered well in advance. Can you talk about that process?
So at least for Mia this year, speaking to the transcripts, we didn't order those until, I want to say, kind of the winter time. So maybe like, I think it was maybe January when we did those. So even though she had already submitted her application to the UW, the deadlines for the transcripts were different because they know we're on different like semester schedules or whatever. So if they wanted those first semester grades, they were going to wait in order for those to be able to be done. And then those transcripts were the ones that were submitted. But
Stacy, wasn't it that video that the counseling office recorded? I mean, some of us were present real time and some weren't, where they kind of hit those dates, right? I mean, none of us committed to memory. I actually went back to the Mercer Island High School website and revisited the video to remind myself, because it's, just like right now, it's hard to remember exactly when it was, but if you look at the counselor website through the Mercer Island High School page, the video I think is really good, and you can skip forward and backward, and it steps you through how to order it and when the deadline was on that, because I can't even recall exactly when it was now. But
yeah, and to pay for the transcripts and everything, you just go on the district site and pay for them like you pay for your yearbook and all of those. You need to make sure you have the exact colleges that you want them submitted to, and all the information though, in order to do that.
And I believe that I think we ordered transcripts well before the end of first semester, and the counseling department was involved with making sure that all of the colleges that my son applied to, that they received updated transcripts after the first semester grades, because those are usually pretty relevant to the decisions that the colleges are making.
And what are they, like $5 each, right, for the transcript, I think? So, if your student is having some heartache about not necessarily knowing their exact list, I mean, kind of go big, right? I mean, it's only $5 just to list them if you're not sure. I mean, worst case, they don't apply there, but I think we listed a few more than we actually ended up applying to.
So for us, the same, what Emily just said, like there were a few colleges that Mia thought she would apply to, but didn't end up, but it was $15 total that we didn't use.
All right, thank you. Here is one. Do you know if we will be allowed to decorate parking spots if spots are assigned? So I know that, so for those, I think we've all been here at the high school for a few years. Some of us might be newer. There used to be a tradition where, so each student was assigned a specific parking spot in the fall. And there was a big tradition at our high school that the night before the senior year, the senior parents got together, and the final year that that happened, actually it was sponsored by the PTA, and they had a map of all of the senior spots, and parents could do it, or if a parent wasn't there, the PTA actually went in and made sure, or everybody that gathered with them made sure that all of the senior spots were decorated for them. So when they show up for school that first day of school, they have a big congratulations on their parking spot. Starting 2 years ago, it just started this past year, right? They now are not assigning specific spots to students, so they are only assigning a lot, like a lot B, lot C, and then I know the Northwood lot. So there was not a way to carry that tradition on, or we have not discovered a way to be able to bring that tradition forward. I haven't heard anything about parking for this coming year, but my guess is that it's going to stay the same that it has the last year or two. I don't think they're going to be going back to individually students assigned to specific spots. Does anyone else have any input on that?
Well, the reason why the PTSA kind of took over the organization of that was because some people by accident used permanent marker and colored in the child's spot. And so they wanted a little more control on where this chalk was coming from so that it would indeed wash off in the rain, because it cost a lot of money. I think they had to go and kind of resurface or repaint that parking spot. So that's the reason why the PTSA had that. 2020, when there were no parking spots assigned, they went ahead and said that as a group, parents could go ahead and decorate the parking lot. So a bunch of us were out there and we just did generic welcome 2020, senior year, and we decorated with chalk that would be able to wash off in the rain. We did decorate the parking lot. So we'll look into that, and maybe that's something we can communicate better to the parents if there's something like that where a bunch of people are going up and doing big drawings. And that's what we ended up doing in 2020.
All right. Okay. So this is one that I see Margie typed in, but I'm gonna also read these lives just so we have a chance to talk about them as well. Please explain what it means by early decision for college.
I can go ahead. Early decision, there's early decision and early action, and early decision is binding. So if you do early decision, that means if the school accepts your child, you are going to that school, you will pay, the tuition, and you have to take out or rescind your applications from all the other schools your child is applying to. So that's early decision. Early action is just an earlier deadline. There still will be a regular decision deadline, but you can apply earlier, you get your decision earlier, which can be very comforting. It can help you plan. It can help you decide if the child's deferred. They can go ahead and go into the normal application pool, but it just is maybe a nice way of knowing earlier than some, students, what options your child has. One thing that I thought was interesting is that some schools have 2 early action deadlines. So if your child doesn't get in the first early action, but they really know this is their school, some schools, and I believe at Santa Clara, might even have a second early action deadline. So that's really good to be aware of. When schools know your child's applying early decision, early action, it is showing that the percentage is higher of who they take because they know this child really maybe wants to come here, especially with early decision. Basically, you're saying, this is where I want to be. This is the school for me, and I think if you look at percentages, the percentage that they accept from early decision applications is much higher.
Can elaborate on that a little bit. I tried to type in the answer, but it is kind of a long, and there can be a lot of discussion about it. I think what you meant, Julie, is that some have a second early decision, ED, not a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know some people had said they wish they'd known that because it helped you.
Yeah, some schools will do their early decision November 1st, for example, and some students might apply early action instead of early decision because they're a little bit worried to make that ED, like, again, that is binding. If you get in, you're going there. So you have to be very clear that that is the school you want to go to. Some schools will take their early action candidates that don't have an answer yet, and come December, they will send you emails trying to get you to switch your application to be an early decision application, which they want to encourage you to do that because it helps them plan better from the college's perspective, because they know, okay, if we admit this kid, they're coming. They've just told us if they go early decision, they're 100% coming. So they love it. They love to see the early decision kids. Obviously, you still need to be a very qualified student to go there. It doesn't mean you'll get in if you're not qualified, but it does show them that you're very committed and that you will go if you get accepted. It's honestly, some kids, to be honest, feel pressured to do an early decision, because a lot of kids do that on Mercer Island, to shoot for some of the harder schools to get into. And my 2 cents, my personal views on this is, like, nobody should feel pressured to do that, because they really need to be committed and know that that's the right school. And especially this past year, I mean, I can say both my daughters, neither one did an early decision application. Neither one had the chance yet to visit all the schools that they wanted to look at. They didn't really feel comfortable doing an early decision and then maybe regretting it, or, they weren't 100% positive of wanting to do that. And that's okay. Especially this past year when they could barely even visit any schools. So there were kids that did early decision applications and had never stepped foot on that campus. That takes a lot to do that. There's kids that did that, and they'll be fine in the end. I mean, it's not, but that's hard to do. So, I would just add that, yes, it can be a great thing if you visited and the kid knows that they would definitely go there and that's what they want to shoot for. But don't get sucked into feeling pressured that you have to do an early decision application, because they don't. They shouldn't feel pressured to.
And one thing I was thinking of about tonight that was a really important point I wanted to make is, when you can, visit the school with your student, to kind of launch on what Margie said. I mean, on paper, there's really prestigious schools, and your student may get into it and they visit it and they'll know if it's just not the right fit for them. So you really want to be careful about committing to something like that without visiting the school. It's interesting. I with both my kids, they really seem to have kind of an intuition once they were at these schools, what worked for them and what didn't. And I think you might hear that too. I can't underemphasize visiting the schools when you can. There's just a lot of angst and a lot of cost. And luckily I've never been part of that, but of switching schools, you really don't want to set up for that. You want to be careful, and there's nothing like visiting if you can. My 2 cents too, those virtual visits, I don't know what you guys thought. I didn't think they were very good. I didn't think it was, wasn't really a visit. I kind of thought it would be like a visit, like walking a campus kind of thing, but it was more kind of just Zoom with a bunch of students or advisors. It wasn't really a visit at all.
All right, thank you. Here's one. How many colleges do you recommend applying to as a senior in high school? This is a good one. They're all good ones, but this is a good one. I think I'll go ahead and just jump in and start. So it depends on the child. You want to give you want to make sure your student has some options and some choices. So for my older daughter, we went for a slam dunk school where she knew she'd get in and she'd be happy if she went there. And then we had a few AIM high schools. So the Naviance that Jackie mentioned in his orientation is really helpful for sort of helping them see, where do I fall in this range? And so what are my, I'm pretty sure I can get in here schools. There's a few reach schools that it would be super cool to go here and I'm almost there, or I'm right on the border. And then there's I know I can go here and I will have fun. And so, so you sort of want a few in each of those categories, I feel like, to give yourself some options, so that when those decisions start coming in, you have some choices and you're not funneled into just one spot. And so I would just say to vary it and to give yourself a broad range, and to make sure that you have, I would say, I mean, I don't know if there's a number. My older daughter applied for 10 schools, and that may be more or less than other people, but it gave her a broad range of decisions once things started coming in and she was making decisions and getting acceptances and things like that. So
just on the tail end of that, just be aware there's like, so there's the Common App, there's the Coalition app, and each one of those applications applies to multiple different universities across the US. The Common App is, I don't want to say the most common, but it's got the most universities on it, and then you can pick, you fill out one application for all of those universities. The Coalition app, at least for my kids, the only school that they were applying to was the UW, because the UW doesn't accept the Common App. They only accept the Coalition app. And so they filled out that application, and then they wanted to, and then the other schools that they were interested in were like Cal Poly and the California schools. So for Cal Poly, it's got its own app. And then if they're interested in Ivies, they're all going to have their own applications too. So you just, so while your kids are picking these schools, keep in mind how many, not just different applications, but how many different essays and how many different things that they're going to have to do, because it's a lot. And so for like my senior who just graduated, it was, I think for her, it was 8 schools. It was a lot, because they basically, aside from like the California state schools, every other one had its own application. So so that's just something to keep in mind too.
yes, the
Just one
essays
thing.
essays are the hardest part of that almost, I think, because the applications are pretty standard answering, but the essays don't always match. And there's a great, I don't know if it's being offered this summer, but there's a great getting your essay started course, usually offered by a couple of our high school teachers in the summer. And I haven't seen any information about it yet, but if it comes out, I've actually been looking for it. I was hoping to be able to share it tonight, but jump on, if that's available, that is an excellent thing to do at the beginning of the summer to get signed up for that class. And that helps you with your first couple, but like Stacy said, every single one is a little bit different. So my daughter was literally writing probably 20 different essays that she was then plugging into different, because there's more than one sometimes. So it's a lot of essay, it can be a lot of essay writing, depending on the number of applications and what those are. So sorry, Jackie, you were.
No, I just wanted to mention one other potential resource for information on this topic. Last spring, the PTSA sponsored a webinar by just a local Mercer Island resident, Ken Glass, who's he's not a college counselor, but he has been actively involved as an interviewer for his university where he went to school. And he has had 3 kids that he's raised. They're adults now, so he's gone through the process himself, and he presented to us, and we recorded that presentation, and I think it's still posted on the PTSA's YouTube page, and he addresses some of these issues, like, you know, recommended how many schools to apply to, how many reaches and safeties. And one thing he said that sort of stuck with me is, don't apply to a school if you're not willing to go to that school. Don't just throw it on there because you think, you know, if it's a safety school, you got it. But if you don't want to go there, don't apply there. So it's, you know, the theme that came from his presentation, which I think we'd probably all echo, is that it's really about finding the right fit for your student. And so that's the work that you want to try to do, is to find that right fit for them.
And then,
But
some of them, I
you can
think it was
find
actually,
that.
oh, go ahead. Yeah, that was a
I
really
just
good
want to say you
YouTube
could
video.
find that if you just go to YouTube
Yeah.
and search for Mercer Island High School YouTube, and you should be able to find it. Sorry, Emily.
No, I remember that. It was really good. I was, one of the points I want to make tonight was that I really would recommend getting your essays done in the summer as much as you can. And just as my daughter spent so much time on that, and the school she ended up going to was one that doesn't even take essays. So bust a move. Yeah, it's all logarithm, but it's very much worth it.
Yeah, and I would on Emily's point, I would recommend that too. Like the summer, both of my kids, like in the fall, like it came fall time and they're like, oh my God, I've got to do all this stuff. And even though Mia had her older brother who's only a year ahead, it was like, just his advice was get it all done in the summer, or get as much as you can get done in the summer, and she's like, oh yeah, I'll totally do that. And then summer came and she was kind of like, yeah. And then we got closer to August and September and she was like, oh my God, I got to get all this done. So yeah, if they cannot procrastinate and you can get them to not procrastinate, that's that would be a good thing for all of them.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. I'm trying to find if there's some that go along with this. So Kristen Hart is asking, are there supplemental essays for the individual California state schools, or is it one common set of essays for California? Does anyone know that one?
Well, keep in mind, I mean, some of them like Cal Poly, it's a logarithm and there's no essay. And that's a California state school.
But for the
it kind of seemed like if we, with the essays, even if the questions were slightly different, a lot of times you can parlay the essays. I mean, if you have, sixth grade standard essays, you can kind of tweak them to the questions.
So for the UC schools, there's one application, and then you submit everything and you do your essays. And then when you're done, you go in, you literally go in there and you click on which schools you want to apply to. UCLA, UC Irvine. So if it's the UC schools, it is one application, and just the one or two essays that were involved with that. And I honestly don't remember if it was one or two.
Well, and there's probably the same thing for Cal State. So you've got the UC and you've got the Cal State, which are big tracks and cover a lot of schools. And then there's all the little individual private schools that don't fall into one of those two categories, that Cal Poly, Chapman, LMU, USD. There's a whole bunch of Redlands. There's a lot that aren't on those two state systems that.
Well, Cal Poly is a state school, but it's not on that system.
Oh, sorry. It's not. Okay. Okay. So let's see. So, okay. So here's another one. What are thoughts on ACT and SAT tests? Will they be required, and when can we sign up? The ACT is showing nothing after July. So I will say so I'll start off this one. I know no one for fall of 2021 is being required to have an SAT or an ACT. Everyone that I've talked to this year, every college counselor, no one has said don't take them. Everybody has said get prepared just in case, because I think it's still a little bit up in the air. Some of the school systems have done away with them. I believe it's the Cal State system that has completely done away with it. UW has done away with it. So there are college systems making decisions not to make them required. Having said that, there are a lot of schools, as I've looked at, because we're starting the process again at this point too, there are a lot of schools still requiring them that have said this will be required starting with the fall class of 2022. So it's very individualized with which schools your kids are interested in applying for. I know my son, there's a couple that he's interested in that it is being required. And so this spring we flew to Boise for him to take it because there was no way to get a test in Washington. I just couldn't find it. But Patty, this question was Patty Brown. Hi, Patty. But so The reason though that the ACT is not showing after July is because their yearly tests, the SAT and ACT, go August through the next summer. And the ACT has one in July. The SAT does not have one in July, but their new test dates will be coming out in the summer for next year. So they will be holding them, but the dates have not been released yet. I've been watching it as well. To see when those come up, because we have a test, but we want to take a retest. So just so that you kind of know, so you're not too late for the SAT or the ACT. They can still be taken in the fall with plenty of time to get those test scores back. And there will, I mean, as far as I know, I don't know where the availability will be, but those tests will be offered again starting in August. Okay, anyone else? I might have just jumped on that one. Let's see. There's a link, Christine Nakano, thank you, gave a link to the essay writing class. So there is an essay writing class being offered. I'm gonna copy and paste this into the chat. You may be able to see it in the question and answer as well, but I'm just going to add that to the chat. So anybody interested in looking that up, and I will be copying that as well. Thank you, Christine. And then Patty also says, I just started a Facebook public group called MIHS Class of 2022 Parents, and you can search for it on Facebook. So thank you. So that there is a group that has been started for senior class parents for the coming year. Thanks, Patty. All right. Let me see if let's see. I don't see any here that we have not touched on. Is there anything from attendees, anything that we haven't answered, or if you have new questions? I am at the end of the actual questions that have been sent so far, which is great.
So I'll just say one thing that I would guess that you are doing this is just as a matter of being a good parent, but watch your kid this year. The senior year is stressful. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of stresses about a lot of peer pressure about schools and grades, and so when my kids were going through, I was more kind of worried about at least one of my children it was really difficult, and they were an excellent student, but just the emotional burden of it was a lot to take, and so I was worried more about their kind of well-being than really how they were doing with colleges or grades or all that. And so I just encourage everybody to kind of keep it all in perspective and realize that, they're gonna find their way. They're gonna find their way, and they're gonna be okay. And it's more important to kind of, keep loving them and supporting them than it is to really push them to do more and more. So I don't know, it's a little bit of a soapbox. I'm not trying to do that, but I just, that's the issue that's always concerned me more than anything within our high performing school community.
You're right, Jackie. And I think that's key. It's a high performing community. And one thing I told both my kids before the spring of their senior year is that just to prepare them mentally that you're going to see a lot of announcements, big announcements, big schools, kids are getting here and there. And, it's easy to feel left out, even if you've got a path forward and a plan or whatever is going on. There's always someone who's doing more and doing better. And it can lead to a lot of angst. At one point, there was a wall of shame, which I kind of thought was really a healthy thing, but maybe there's some downsides too, where, people put the letters of refusal that they got, the schools they didn't get into. And I think that kind of helps keep it in perspective, because they're going to start seeing a lot of that in the spring. And I think it's a healthy conversation to have with your kids before the spring of their senior year, that there's going to be a lot of parties and a lot of congratulations and a lot of hype. And maybe, their path isn't isn't the same as someone else's, and to just not have that um that that feeling in front of them like someone's always doing better. I think there's a lot of anxiety around that. You know, there's always someone doing better. There's always someone doing worse. It's just hard to compare. And it's a stressful time.
I was gonna say in our class, a bunch of parents said that we would try not to ask other children, well, where are you going next year? It just puts
Yeah.
pressure on it. It doesn't need to. I mean, we don't really care, you know, where the other child's going. We just need to worry about maybe our child. So we made kind of a commitment to say, let's not ask children where they're going next year, but instead, you know, what are you looking forward to next year? Or are you excited for next year? Something like that. It just really, you know, it is high performing. There's a lot of this feeling of pressure and we don't want any more of that. So we just tried to stay away from that question.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We should have done that too. The other thing was that, you know, you're going to see it more and more, and it really dawned on me senior year, you know, you're in the back seat, any kind of teacher interaction, all that kind of stuff pretty much needs to be your student at this point. And I know that's hard for some people to let go. I mean, there's the Facebook parent group you could be part of, or there's also the Parent Advisory Council, which I think was a great way for me to kind of know what was going on and be aware of things, but not really be in the face of my student necessarily. But I would really recommend it. I did that with both my kids all through high school, and it really helped me, you know, understand, you know, things about the math department. Why is it so hard? I mean, they talked about that there, and it's just, it helps you keep it in perspective, and a different perspective than just what you hear from your student. It's a Parent Advisory Council. So I encourage you to get involved with that if you're interested.
All right. Senior year has a lot of celebrations and a lot of great things to look forward to, and also brings a lot of, can be a little bit stressful for families and for seniors. So the, you know, PTA and the high school work hand in hand a lot senior year to provide activities and the awards and all of the events at the end of the year, and sort of to try to help walk our seniors through. So if you're feeling overwhelmed at any point, just know that you can always reach out, and there will absolutely be someone to help answer a question or do anything we can. And I'm going to be in this group as well, but to help get through some of those trickier times. So before we sign off, are there any additional questions from participants? Is there anything else we can help with? I don't see anything. Okay, well, happy summer, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. And thank you to all the panelists. We really appreciate you coming and sharing your wisdom and insight, and for taking time out of the evening. So thanks to everyone, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you soon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.